I stayed quiet after a workplace moment. Weeks later, my family's behavior changed in a way I didn't expect. I never thought a single moment at work could make me question everything I believed about my family. There was no shouting. No dramatic confrontation. No slammed doors. Just a sentence. Said casually. In a break room that smelled like burnt coffee and printer ink. I'm 32 years old, married, steady job, the kind of life people describe as doing well. My wife, Lena, and I had been together for 7 years, married for 3. We didn't have kids yet, but we talked about it. A lot. Names, schools, what kind of parents we'd be. Normal future stuff. At least I thought it was normal. That morning, my team was gathered around the break room table, killing time before a meeting. Someone mentioned parental leave policies. Another joked about how kids ruin sleep forever. Then Mark, mid-40s, senior manager, divorced twice, the guy who always thought his opinions were life lessons, laughed and said, "Kids change everything. Especially for women. That's when you really see who's willing to sacrifice." A few people chuckled. I didn't. Before I could say anything, he added, still smiling, "Most families expect the same thing anyway. The man keeps building his career. The woman adjusts. It's just how it works." He looked straight at me. "You'll see when your wife gets pregnant." The room went quiet for half a second. Not long enough to be awkward. Just long enough for something inside me to tighten. I smiled politely. Nodded. Said nothing. Because arguing in public never makes you smarter, it just makes you louder. But the comment stayed with me. All day. On my commute home. While I cooked dinner. Even while Lena talked about her day, excited about a new project she'd been assigned. She was glowing. Talking fast. Hands moving. The way she always did when she felt challenged and alive. And suddenly, without meaning to, I pictured her giving that up. Not because she wanted to. Because it was expected. That night, after she fell asleep, I stayed awake staring at the ceiling. I realized something uncomfortable. I had always assumed we were on the same page about the future, without ever truly checking what page she was on. And worse? I wasn't sure I liked the page I'd been handed by default. People assume silence means agreement. It doesn't. Sometimes silence is the moment you realize a conversation isn't worth having yet, because you don't have all the information you need. I didn't want to argue with a coworker who had already decided how families should work. I wanted to understand my own first. So I made a quiet decision. Not a dramatic one. A private one. I decided to start paying attention. To what was said casually. To what was assumed. To what no one questioned because that's just how it's done. And within a week, I started noticing things I couldn't unsee. Once I decided to pay attention, it felt like someone had turned the volume up on conversations I'd always treated as background noise. At first it was small things. My mother called on Sunday like she always does. We talked about work, the weather, nothing important, until she casually said, "So, when Lena has a baby, you'll need to start thinking about something more stable. Something long-term." I already had a stable job. But I knew what she meant. More stable how? I asked. "Well," she said as if it were obvious, "you'll be the provider. You can't take risks anymore." I waited. She continued. "And Lena will slow down. That's natural. Mothers always do. Always." I didn't argue. I didn't correct her. I just said, "We'll see." She laughed softly the way people do when they think you're being naive. After the call, I sat there holding my phone, realizing something important. No one had ever asked Lena what she wanted. Not my mother. Not my coworkers. Not even me. They all spoke as if the decision had already been made. A few days later, Lena and I had dinner with my parents. Everything was polite. Normal. Safe. Until my father said while cutting his steak, "You know, when you two have kids, someone's going to have to be realistic." Lena looked up. "Realistic how?" she asked calmly. He shrugged. "Careers change. Priorities change. You can't have it all." There it was again. That invisible line. I felt my chest tighten. This was the moment where people expected an argument. A defense. Raised voices. But Lena didn't get angry. She didn't react emotionally at all. She smiled. "Why do you think that?" she asked. My father hesitated. Not used to being questioned. "Well, someone has to be there for the child." "And that someone can't be him?" she asked, nodding toward me. Silence. Not uncomfortable. Just exposed. My mother cleared her throat. "That's not what we meant." But it was exactly what they meant. Lena changed the subject before it escalated. On the drive home, I finally said what had been sitting in my chest all week. "Do you feel like people expect you to give things up?" She didn't answer right away. Then she said something that surprised me. "I feel like they expect you to never even consider it." That hit harder than any argument could have. That night we sat on the couch, lights low, TV muted. I asked her the question I realized I'd been afraid to ask. "If we have kids, what do you actually want your life to look like?" She didn't answer immediately. Not because she didn't know. Because she had thought about it, deeply. "I want to keep working," she said. "I want to grow. I don't want motherhood to erase me." I nodded. "I don't want fatherhood to excuse me," I replied. She smiled at that. But underneath the smile I felt something shift. Because wanting the same thing, and being ready to defend it against expectations, are not the same. And I realized something else. There was a decision coming. One I hadn't talked about yet. One that didn't involve arguing, proving, or convincing anyone. Just choosing. And I was already leaning in a direction that would surprise everyone. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. At work, nothing had technically changed. Same desk. Same meetings. Same forced laughs during lunch breaks. But once you see something clearly, you can't unsee it. I started noticing patterns. How certain coworkers talked about their families like obligations. How praise was given publicly, but credit was taken privately. How people assumed that blood automatically meant loyalty. And how often I'd been excusing behavior just because it came wrapped in family. At home, I didn't announce anything. No dramatic conversations. No confrontations. I just adjusted. I stopped volunteering extra time. Stopped being the default fixer. Stopped explaining myself. Instead, I focused on building something quietly. I updated my resume. Reached out to an old contact I hadn't spoken to in years. Started saving more aggressively. Not out of anger. Out of clarity. Then one afternoon, about 3 weeks later, something unexpected happened. During a team meeting, my manager casually mentioned a new project. One that would require total availability and personal sacrifice. Before, everyone knew I would have nodded and said yes. This time I didn't. I said calmly, "I won't be able to commit to that." The room went silent. My manager blinked. "Is everything okay at home?" There was again. That assumption. I smiled. "Everything's fine. I've just reprioritized." No excuses. No over-explaining. Just truth. Later that day, I got a message from HR asking to check in. Not because I'd done anything wrong, but because people weren't used to me choosing myself. That night, I went home and found an email waiting. From that old contact. Subject line, "Still interested?" I stared at it for a long moment. Because this was the part no one talks about, when the shift actually starts working in your favor. I replied with one word, "Yes." I didn't know it yet, but that single reply was about to ripple through my life. And back to the very people who assumed I'd never change. The interview wasn't dramatic. No power suit. No big speech about ambition. Just a quiet video call on a Tuesday morning. They asked about my experience. I answered honestly. They asked about availability. I answered carefully. Then came the question that caught me off guard. How do you handle pressure from people who expect more than you can give? I paused. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because a month ago I would have answered it wrong. I've learned, I said slowly, that expectations aren't obligations. Clear boundaries prevent resentment. The interviewer smiled. 2 days later I got the offer. Better pay. Clear role. No unspoken sacrifices. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my coworkers. Not my extended family. Not even the people who thought they knew my plans. I gave notice quietly. That's when the reaction started. My manager looked genuinely confused. "I thought you were solid here." "I am," I replied. "Just not available in the way you assumed." Some coworkers congratulated me. Others avoided eye contact. One person joked, "Must be nice not having family responsibilities." I didn't correct them. Because the truth was simple. I had responsibilities. I just stopped letting them be weaponized. The real shift came a week later. At a family gathering. Someone mentioned my new job in passing. The room went still. "You didn't ask anyone? You didn't discuss it first? You just decided?" I nodded. No defensiveness. No raised voice. I made the best choice for my future. There was no argument. No explosion. Just discomfort. And that's when I realized something important. People don't get upset when you make bad choices. They get upset when you stop making convenient ones. I went home that night lighter than I'd felt in years. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally understood, you don't have to fight to change the story. Sometimes you just step out of the role and let the silence do the talking. 3 weeks later, something unexpected happened. Nothing dramatic. No confrontation. No apology tour. Just a phone call. It was from the same family member who had always spoken for me instead of to me. "I didn't realize how much pressure we were putting on you," they said. I didn't respond right away. They continued, softer now. "When you stopped asking for approval, it forced us to notice how often we assumed you'd just adjust." That word stuck with me. Adjust. Like my life was a flexible object. Like my time and energy were expandable. "I should have said something sooner," they added. "But you never complained." I took a breath. "I didn't complain," I said calmly, "because I didn't think I was allowed to." There was silence on the other end. Then this, "We've been rethinking things. Not just with you." That was the twist. My quiet decision didn't just change my future. It exposed a pattern no one had questioned before. A week later, something even more telling happened. At the next gathering, no one volunteered my time. No one spoke on my behalf. No one assumed. They asked. And when I said no, it was accepted. No guilt. No tension. Just respect. That's when I understood the real lesson of the story. You don't teach people how to treat you by explaining. You teach them by what you quietly stop accepting. I didn't burn bridges. I didn't demand understanding. I simply chose myself, and let that choice redraw the boundaries. Sometimes the most powerful change doesn't look loud at all. It looks like peace.